Hello, everyone. Good morning, good morning, good morning. It's so good to see some of you in the chat. Hello from South Carolina, second grade. Welcome. Happy Sunday. From Maryland, 10th grade English teacher. Hello, hello. As you're coming in and starting the stream, drop some things in the comments. I'm going to be here answering your questions. Creating healthy boundaries is a big topic that people really want to talk more about, but kind of feel as if they don't have the language all of the time to do it, and don't have the experience to stand in their power as they're creating healthy boundaries. We know we want them, but we're not totally sure what to do about that. And communicating them is a big piece of it. Oh, good morning from Pennsylvania. Hello, hello, hello. So as you're watching, I will be here answering your questions, and I want you to drop things in the chat that really resonate with you. One of the questions that I have for you is, when I say the word boundaries, what comes up for you? What kinds of things come up for you? Sometimes it's stress, sometimes it's frustration, sometimes armor. What comes up for you when I say the word boundaries? Limitations. Yeah. Walls. Yeah. And no extra work. Yeah. People pleasing. These are great. When I hear boundaries, I freeze. Yeah. And that totally makes sense. And thank you so much for being so active right here in the chat. The more that you put in, the more you're going to get out of this time that we have together. When we hear boundaries, oftentimes we imagine these big walls that are around us. We armor up, and there's a sense of freeze sometimes. And that's totally normal, because in creating boundaries, there's a lot of this idea that we need to separate ourselves from another person. And that really hits on one of the most primal needs that we have as human beings. One of them, of course, being belonging. And so setting up a boundary really creates this cognitive dissonance with this primal need to belong. So no wonder it feels scary. No wonder it feels as if we need to freeze. No wonder if it feels like we need to people please to kind of circumvent some boundaries that we know that we need to have. So thank you to that. Drop something in the chat if that resonates with you. And as you're doing that, I'm going to actually just introduce myself a little bit, because I realize that we're here, and I want to make sure that you know who I am a little bit. I know you have all that information based on all this incredible work that Brittany did, and shout out to Brittany. She put this whole thing together with her team, and it's just been a fabulous, well-organized enterprise. So well done. I am Jen Rafferty. I am a mom of two. I am an educator, I'm an author, and I am a TEDx speaker, and I'm the founder of Empowered Educator, which is a professional development company that focuses on transformational professional development about the social emotional well-being of all of the adults in schools. And we put all of our effort into our kids. Obviously, we're in the business of kids, but if we're not paying attention to the adults in these spaces, we're kind of missing the mark. And as much as I know that the well-being of a school is dependent on the well-being of its educators. So we're going to talk about things like this, everything you've learned so far in this gorgeous virtual conference, and also really about how to communicate and create those healthy boundaries. So yeah, drop something in the chat if this idea of belonging is resonant with you. It makes total sense that creating boundaries feels uncomfortable. Of course it feels uncomfortable. It would be weird if it didn't feel uncomfortable. So as you're moving through the session today, drop your questions right here in the chat. I'm going to hang out here for a second and see what you got, because I don't want to be talking through the presentation. And I'm going to just go through some of these comments right here. Let's see what we've got. What are some of the things based on these comments right here, what are some of the things that prevent you from creating boundaries or from communicating your boundaries? We've got I freeze in there. That's a big one. And as you're dropping those things in the comments, the freeze, of course, is a stress response. We're activating our amygdala, which is that part of our brain that's responsible for our stress response of fight, flight, freeze, or fawn. Because even though we're not getting chased by a bear, our brain still acts as if we are when we are in these stressful situations. So creating a boundary, even though we know, although I don't know about you, but I've never actually heard of anybody dying because they created a boundary. However, your brain really thinks that you are. So, having the stress response of fight, flight, freeze, or fawn, that makes total sense. Your brain literally thinks you're going to die. And that's why it feels so uncomfortable, right? Um, how do you explain your boundaries to others? And what do you do when people push back? That's a beautiful question. So I'm going to actually start with the second one first, because do you explain your boundaries to others? I will kind of walk you through a couple of examples of how we can practice the language of boundaries. One of the things that I say in the session is, boundaries aren't walls, boundaries aren't limitations, boundaries are love. Boundaries are love. Boundaries are love for you. Boundaries are love for the other person. Boundaries are love for the relationship that you have between the two of you. Because when you don't honor your boundaries, you are betraying yourself and you are showing up in that relationship or to that thing, whatever that is, with resentment. Like, drop something in the chat if that resonates with you. You said yes when you really wanted to say no. How are you showing up? You're not showing up as your best self. You're not showing up as the most favorite version of yourself. You're showing up out of obligation, and that never feels good. And so when we start to reframe these boundaries as being love, well, everything changes then. So I want to start with there of what do you do when people push back, knowing that boundaries are coming from a place of love. Um, you know, we are always going to get pushback. We're always going to get pushback on our boundaries because the people who are going to push back are the folks who have benefited from you not having a boundary. So, of course, their feathers are going to be all ruffled, right? For example, you would like to eat lunch quietly with the door closed. You used to be out in the faculty room, or your BFFs from work used to all come into your room or used to go into their room, and it would be this, um, complaint session or venting, and the energy wouldn't be very good, or there would always be extra work to do, and it just didn't feel good. So you decided, okay, my boundary is I am going to close my door and eat lunch by myself. And your friend comes in and is like, hey, Brittany, what's going on? You always eat lunch with us, and now you're not eating lunch. And you get to communicate that boundary, which I'll go back to in a second. And there might be some pushback, like, what, do you not want to hang out with me anymore? Do you not want to be friends with me anymore? Is everything okay? That's one example. Another example is, I'm not going to do any more committees after school without compensation. And you used to be a part of everything. I've worked with a lot of people, teachers who are either coaches or they are. Oh, good morning, Erica from from where? Oh, from North Carolina. Amazing. We've got North Carolina. We've got South Carolina. Fantastic. I work with a lot of coaches, a lot of musical theater directors at their schools, and they're like, Jen, I've been doing this for years, and it's killing me. I don't want to do this anymore, but I'm really afraid of what people are going to say and think and do. And the truth of that is, we worked through a lot of that fear together. And every single time when they communicate, like, hey, I'm no longer going to be doing this thing anymore. Yeah, there's a lot of pushback. And here's the thing about pushback too, is that what other people think is none of your business. Please write that down. What other people think is none of your business. And in a world where it is very easy to let other people's opinions guide your behaviors, guide your actions, guide your choices, guide your thoughts, guide your feelings. That's a big one that when you can really embody that, it's quite liberating. Yeah, what other people think is none of your business, right? Isn't that beautiful? That's something that I consistently remind myself of every single day, because I have to live my life by my own rules, and my own beliefs and my own thoughts. Otherwise, I'm living someone else's life. I'm living other people's expectations. I'm living out these obligations of these beliefs that I have of what I think being responsible is, what being committed is, like committed as a teacher, right? What being like a good teacher means. Okay, let's actually brainstorm that a little bit. So when I say, what does it mean to be a good teacher? What kind of things come up for you when I say that? What does it mean to be a good teacher? And as you're writing, I'm going to say a couple of mine, right? Oh, yeah, great. I'm a people pleaser. So I struggle saying no. Definitely looking forward to listening to your session. Yeah, amazing. The an amazing awareness. I want to be clear here, and the people pleasing, and that has come up a lot. Actually, I'm going to just sidestep for a second for my question. The people pleasing piece of this is, again, like, this is a perfectly normal adaptive behavior to to um, receive validation. Like, this is what we've learned growing up. This is what has been modeled for us as kids and as teachers. And so, being a good teacher is present, applying effort, accommodating, right? Um, being pleasing, like, don't ruffle any feathers, not being too um, assertive, right? Just kind of going with the flow. And if you look at the examples in your life, both at home and of the teachers that you had, a lot of times that's what kind of fits into like being a good teacher, right? Nice. Um, and there is a price to all of that. And so, what I like to consider is I kind of kick the idea about being like a good teacher or a good mom, if you will, out the door, because I'm not interested in being a good teacher or a good mom or, a good boss right now when I run my own team. I'm more interested in being an aligned person, an aligned mom, an aligned, CEO of this company, an aligned teacher when I teach. Because when I look at alignment, well, then boundaries get very clear because I know what I am and am not available for, because I know what I want to do, where I want to go, how I want to show up, who I want to be. And so if I am somebody and I believe that I value my self regulation, well, then having a boundary like eating lunch on my own is so much easier because it's aligned versus, well, if I want to be a good friend, well, good friends, what does that mean? Well, all the examples and all of the evidence that I have from my entire life and all the TV that I've watched and all of the other relationships that I've witnessed and been a part of, a good friend, shows up no matter what. A good friend sacrifices their self so they can be there for their friend. A good friend eats lunch with her other friends because she doesn't want them to feel bad. I mean, like, do you see what I'm saying? Do you following here? Like, there are all these stories associated with this word good, and truthfully, that's all judgment calls. And when we step out of judgment for a second, the word like good is a judgment. When we step out of judgment and we go into something that's more neutral, like aligned, well, then that's where your power is. The company I run is called Empowered Educator because I support people, and my team supports people in finding their power. And when you step into a word aligned, Well, now you have options and you can start getting curious as to what your decisions are and what your choices have been, and really start to ask good questions like, is this aligned? Do I need a boundary here? How do I communicate this boundary? So drop something in the chat if that's resonating with you. And I'm going to start looking at some of these comments. Um, Being good means I've learned that it means that I give what I can at work, but I also need to make some time for my family at home. That still makes me a good teacher. Absolutely. Yes. Oh, good. And love using the word aligned. I'm glad you like that word, Taryn, because that shift was huge for me. Huge, huge, huge. Good. It makes sense. Yes, yes, yes. Definitely want validation. I was chosen as teacher of the year, and that was nice validation, but I still struggle from time to time. Yeah. And I want to normalize that for you too, because, and first of all, I appreciate your vulnerability in here because we need to start talking about these things. Otherwise, they stay in the shadows and we never learn, we never grow. So, yes, I definitely want validation. Um, you know, Here's the thing about validation and how it relates to boundaries. We often pretzel ourselves. We emotionally pretzel ourselves. We mentally pretzel ourselves into people pleasing. So somebody else can say, like, good job, or I love you, or thank you, or give that little like wink and a nod of like, you're doing all right. And, external validation is nice, right? Like, it's nice. I as former A student, right? Well, still a student. I'm finishing my dissertation right now. As an A student, like, that gold star A plus validation was ended up being really important to me. And then I went on in my educational career to I was a vocal performance and music education major in college. So, I was always on stage, and that external validation of the applause was something that fueled me. That external validation of like, good job, Jen, allowed me to know, okay, am I okay? Like, am I doing it right? Am I on the right path? And what happens is when you do this, and it's totally normal, by the way, so I just want to normalize this. Like, this is part of being human, but we're raising our conscious awareness of these things because all of this happens on the subconscious level. So when we raise our conscious awareness, what's actually happening is that in this example for me, I was handing over my self-worth to my audience. I was handing over my self-worth to the teachers that I would be taking tests for. I'd be handing over my self-worth to my colleagues, to my principals. And as teachers, we do this all the time. We hand over our self-worth to the parents, to our administrative team, and we even do it with our students. We hand over our self-worth to our students. So creating boundaries feels very scary, because if we are creating a boundary, well, then that seemingly jeopardizes that validation. And I want to make something very clear. I'm going to get like really close and intimate with my camera right now because I need you to hear this. You never need to negotiate your worth. Your worth is never up for negotiation. You are worthy because you woke up this morning. You are valuable because you woke up this morning. And the truth is, when we are chasing external validation of that, we are always chasing it. Because, okay, you got that teacher of the year. Amazing. Now what? Now what? How are you going to get that hit of that external validation? And when I talk about abdicating your power, that is what I'm talking about, because we are handing it over to something outside of ourselves, to somebody else. And our sense of worth, our sense of value is now in the hands of other people, our students, our parents, our administrators, our friends. And what I need you to understand here is that that sort of validation is an inside job. So I'm going to pause right here for a second because there's lots of really good stuff here in the comments. Yes, right. Mic drop. Yes, it's tough. I know that there are teachers that care less about it, but there are some teachers that feel like they need that validation to feel like a good teacher. And I want to normalize this too. Everybody does this. Everybody, even though it might seem like people need it less in different arenas of their life, this is a human thing. This isn't a teacher thing. This is an everyone thing, where like that validation might come from their own children. That validation might come from their spouse. It might come from their parents. You know, this is why creating boundaries feels hard. But again, you're actually not, well, I'm going to go in a different space right now because I want to just teach you something a little bit new. Your nervous system, your brain body has one job, and that's to keep you alive. That's it. It doesn't care if you're happy. It doesn't care if you're learning. It doesn't care if you have healthy boundaries. It doesn't care if you're living your best life and living your dreams. In fact, it rather you didn't, because it has no evidence of you doing that and surviving. And so it's going to continue to keep you in the state that is familiar, even though it's not serving you anymore. So when you say, all right, so Jen, watch the session, I'm ready, I'm going to create a healthy boundary. And your nervous system is going to be like, wait a second. I have no evidence of you creating a boundary and surviving. There's no way we're going to be doing this. And it's going to feed you all sorts of thoughts like guilt and overwhelm and blank brain. Like, I don't even know what to say, to prevent you from actually doing it. So please write this down, please do. You are not your brain. You are a person who has a brain. You are not your brain. You're a person who has a brain. And what's so great about that is, you can choose to decide whether or not this is serving you. You can choose to raise your awareness and make new choices. And in order to do that, you need to create safety within your nervous system so it feels safe to move through something like the unknown, like creating a new boundary that you've never done before. And how do you do this? One of the really great exercises is breathing. And I know that if you've been in this wellness summit this weekend, I'm sure you've gotten a ton of breathing exercises. So choose one that you like and remind yourself, like, this is safe. Close your eyes. This is safe. It is safe to create a boundary. Boundaries are love. Boundaries are love for me. Boundaries are love for this other person. Boundaries are love for this relationship that we have. And in order for me to feel aligned and be aligned, I get to make this boundary. And really, like, speak it out loud as you're breathing, as your eyes are closed, to create that safety in your nervous system, who so desperately wants to keep you the same, because same equals alive. So I'm going to pause for a second right here, drop something else in the comments. What's happening for you? What's coming up for you? Oh yeah, it puts extra pressure on us as well after you win. So right, so you get like the validation of, okay, we got teacher of the year, and then it's like, all right, well, there's this huge feeling of like, well, now what? Now what? What's next now? And we're just constantly chasing, right? Drop something in the chat if that resonates with you. Yeah. Okay, so in the last few minutes, I'm just going to go back to a question that somebody had up there about how do we communicate this? One of my favorite ways is transparently. Having a difficult conversation sometimes requires a little extra TLC, which might mean something like, hey, listen, I need to have a conversation with you and I'm feeling a little bit vulnerable about it. Do you think you have the space to have this conversation right now? And that other person could say yes, or they could say no. And if they say no, not the time. But if they say yes, go ahead and do it. And what I mean is, now is not the time. Now is not the time maybe to be vulnerable, but you can still have the conversation because you are only responsible for you. You're not responsible for that other person. Like, I am appreciative that you have thought of me for this committee. I think it's a valuable initiative, and I am no longer participating in after school activities without compensation. Boundary, right? Um, hey, I really appreciate the invitation to do this um, planning party planning party committee, or planning your party, or planning your the being in charge of the gifts for the staff. I really appreciate that opportunity, but I have made a decision that I'm not taking on anything else right now. That's it, right? There doesn't have to be conflict. It doesn't. We often attribute this idea of conflict with seemingly difficult conversations, but it doesn't have to be. Yeah, the more we normalize it, the better the system will become. Well, and that's just it. The change has to start with you. It really does. We point fingers outside of us all the time of like, well, if only they would just, or if the system would just, or the kids are so difficult, or like the parent, like just we're just screaming out into the void because the only person you have any agency in any sort of control is you. And so you have to show up and be the change. That's how this works. And creating boundaries not only allows you to be more aligned, but also, and this is the really big one, why this creates that ripple effect. When you do it, you become an expander for somebody else because you show them what's possible for them. And that's how things really start to shift. Yes, nothing changes if nothing changes 1000%. And you're the one that gets to be the change. So it's been a pleasure spending the morning with you. I am so excited that you're here. I'm excited for your school communities. I'm excited for your students. I would love to know you more. So there's lots of really great freebies that are going on right here. And what I would also invite you to do is check out my website, empowerededucator.com, at the resources page right there as well. And follow me on Instagram, @JenRafferty_. And I cannot wait to continue to have this conversation. Make sure you sign up for all those freebies too, because there's some really juicy things that are in there. Have a fabulous day. Please remember, you are a gift to this world. So act accordingly. Take care, everyone.